Tom, anytime I hear this concept of, what are you working for? Who do you work for? I think of the old story. I also have to go find it and cut and paste it here, but it said the version I got here says 1671. Christopher Wren observed three bricklayers on a scaffold, one crouched, one half standing, and one standing tall, working very hard and fast. To the first bricklayer, Christopher asked the question, "What are you doing?" To which the bricklayer replied, "I'm a bricklayer. I'm working hard laying bricks to feed my family." The second bricklayer responded, "I'm a builder. I'm building a wall." But the third bricklayer, the most productive of the three and the future leader of the group, when asked the question, "What are you doing?" he replied with a gleam in his eye, "I am a cathedral builder. I'm building a great cathedral to the Almighty." I love the story. I love the perspective. I mean, can you imagine, going into a fast food place and the kids flipping burgers and to ask them, "What are you doing?" And if one said, I'm helping feed the world, expediently and efficiently, we don't hear that. I'm flipping burgers for a buck. But I think it's really, again, this story that we just heard from your dad, the bricklayer story, it really calls us, the Matt, to think about what we were doing. And so, Tom, I thought about this. Well, you know what? Here, let me start here, because we're going to get theological. Can we do that?
Absolutely.
Okay. Terry here, he says, "I work for my family, my clients, my God." Amy, "I work for God, serving entrepreneurial women and couples, helping them break through the blind spots and blocks in their relationships caused by trauma." Victoria, "God, and he has placed me in a medical practice to lead a team of 8 staff and 5 surgeons." Fun stuff. Don, "God, everybody else is secondary." Okay, I get that. If I'm honest with myself, and this is what occurred to me as I was thinking about this. If I'm honest with myself, first, I work for me. And obviously everything I do is motivated by, I want everything that I do. And I think it does. If I got proof that God didn't exist, I would have a very hard time waking up the next day. So obviously everything is flavored with that. But if I'm really honest, I work for me. I mean, first off, I work for me, and I work at what inspires and fulfills me. And I thought, you know, again, it's kind of facetious to say, because I can't conceive of my reason for living without a belief in God. But to a degree, if it was proven God didn't exist, to some degree, I would still wake up the next day and work. But further, and this is the one that got me, because it's so tempting to say for my family. But if my family disappeared and I woke up in a different reality tomorrow, same reality, but I just didn't have a family, it was just me, I'd still be doing the same thing. And if there's $1 billion in my bank account, I'd still come in and do the same thing. So one, I'm grateful for that, but what it really belies, if I get under there, is who I'm really working for. Me. Same person I'm going out and riding my bike for. I do it for me. I do it because it gives me purpose. It gives me joy. And I do work. But as I do it, and I have the mindset of as unto God, just like the picture behind me, that's a picture of Jesus. That's a depiction of Jesus sitting with a businessman who's seeking counsel from him. Jesus is talking. I want to be that. I want to be hearing from my, Father in heaven in regards to everything that I do. And I am doing work that I believe benefits people, and I'm striving to benefit them. And I'm doing it to put, food on the table. So all those things exist, but the altruism out of that, I'm not going to uphold that so much, because at the end of the day, I'm also doing it because it fulfills me. So what do you think? Give me your thoughts on that. I just threw that at you.
Yeah, I think that theological question, why do you work? Is it for God? I noticed that maturity gained through trial and fire helps you to get clarity on something like that. Um, we start off in life, we think we got all the time in the world. We start doing something, we might or might not be good at it, but we get some momentum, we start advancing. And for our culture and the inputs that we get, it's usually about, I need to work so I can get the next thing, because the next thing is what's finally going to make me happy. And then we grow up a little bit, we have some setbacks, we experience some pain, and we say, wait a second, things don't make me happy. And it's not enough people are actually enjoying what they do because they're working for a paycheck instead of a dream. If
Yeah.
Howard Partridge says the only reason that your business exists, the only reason you do what you do, is it's the vehicle to allow you to achieve your life goals. What you do gets you towards your life goals. And I think who's the guy who does the, oh man, he's the business guy that talks about dirty jobs and
Mike Rowe.
micro. Okay, so and he and Rabbi Daniel Appert are on the same page on this. You know what? Every job has value. Every job that solves a problem is fantastic. And it doesn't have to be the be all end all, the job itself, but how you do the job and why you do the job changes everything. And so if you show up to the job for $1.75 an hour versus to serve people in the railroad, you get two different outcomes, right? And if you do what you do because it's taking you closer to your dream, your level of motivation and dedication and mental awareness and empathy and care and everything that you do is going to be different. If you walk in, well, all I get is X dollars per hour, X dollars per year. My job is to get away with as much as I can versus, man, the better I do here, the faster I get my dream. Those are two different parallels.
Yep.
And I think what the problem is that if the only reason you do what you do is to achieve your life goals, the problem is that people don't have life goals. They've never taken the time to say, this is what's valuable, this is what's important. And so I think we start to work for ourselves and for God when we get that clarity, that alignment between what our life goals are and what God's purpose is.
Yeah.
If we
Yep.
don't know what our life goals are, or if we never take the time to figure out what is our purpose here, then we're not working for ourselves or for God.
Agreed. And, I love what you said about every job having value. That's part of my story. I had some time, Tom, of being somewhat judgmental about what people do. If I didn't see an altruistic aspect out of that. And I had a guy I'll never forget who was part of my organization in helping him become self-employed. And he was really into boarding, wakeboarding in the summer, snowboarding in the winter. And I learned through him, it just lit him up. Now he did find value in this. He said, I love getting people outdoors and getting them, getting families to have these experiences. It draws them together. But so he did have a purpose, and I get that, and I appreciated that. But I also just saw it just lit him up, and it finally occurred to me that it just made him a happier guy than the job, because he had like the real job over here that did not paid well, good solid job, safe job, all that kind of stuff, the one that your parents tell you to get, and he had that. I don't know what he did, accounting or something like that, but didn't like that. And I realized, wait, this doing this other thing, it makes him a happy guy. He's going to be a happier husband, a happier father. He'll probably end up making more money because he enjoys it. And it was again, preaching to me, quit judging what people do. Every job, like you said, has value, whether it is intrinsic of it or whether it just fulfills you, gives you joy, gives you meaning, gives you purpose. It floats your boat, as we say. If it does, man, that has so much value. And Tom, I just had this acutely happen in my life. I've got two sons. One's 16 driving, one's just about to turn 15. And we were looking at jobs, and I was working on helping them get something together. So I've got one driving the other. And we got them three specific opportunities, or a couple others. I think they could have gotten two, but three actual offers on the table for summer work for these guys. And we looked at them, and long story short, they picked the least paying job, because we talked about what are you going to be doing all day long at each of these. One was helping with the parks and rec in the area. My guys, I mean, they do cross country and track, but they're not big sports guys. They don't play ball sports. They didn't. Some of their other siblings did, but these two did not. And so they're going to be off helping with that, helping ref and helping do this at that. They don't care about that. It'd be like saying, can you get behind that? They said, we don't care. I mean, we can try to serve people well, but we could care less. There was another job that paid really well that was cooking for a lot of the area camps. So we're up here in the mountains of Colorado, lots of camps, and it was cooking for that. Now we're a foodie family, but they're not really into cooking at this point in their lives. And to stand in a kitchen doing that, is that something that they're excited about, especially when they would be doing a lot of food? Now, we are a real healthy food family. And for them to be sitting there preparing foods that they may struggle with a little bit of thinking, I'm giving these kids crap, to eat. So again, it's hard for them to get behind it. And they took a position at a camp doing a variety of things where they're actually going to be engaged with the kids and with the staff and be able to, it's getting kids out of the cities into the mountains is part of their ethos, and some things that, man, they can get behind. So they feel like they are going to be serving that purpose. And man, we have kids these days, and we don't do a good job of, well, heck, even with ourselves. I mean, we could look right now and ask everybody, especially people who are employed by a company, are you really behind the product? Are you really behind the service? And of course, that's a big problem that we have today, as you know well, Tom, too, is that we have, especially in the bigger corporations, people who are further and further removed from the end product. Their end product is happening way out here, and they're in a high rise, and they're 20 degrees removed from what the end product or service even is. There's a guy called Matthew Crawford, an author, who wrote the book. I'll have to look it up because I may misphrase it. It's shop class. He's talking about shop class in schools that pretty much is gone now. It was shop class as Soulcraft or for Soulcraft, something like that. But it was a guy, he went to school, got his fancy degree, got a high paying job in Washington with this think tank. And he's like 6 weeks into it. Fancy job, fancy title, lots of status, pays well. And he's sitting there going, what on earth am I doing? And he quit and opened up a motorcycle repair shop. So this is kind of the motorcycle repair Zen. What was that? I can't remember the name of that book. But he talks about that we are not helping our kids look at what are they connected to? What is the end product? Even if you're in the high rise, he wasn't dissing that. But he says, but do you know the end product and the end service and the end user and how you are impacting them? Because when you are so far removed, which I think Mike Rowe talks a lot about that, Tom.
Yeah. On the little rant that you just went on, not really a rant, but I'll run with that.
I'm okay with that.
You're okay with that?
Yeah.
Just one of the trends I'm reading is that, of course, in the last year, a lot of kids came home for school, right? I mean, so you got parents working from home in a lot of cases, trying to juggle their kids working and going through school.
Yeah.
So now they're working and doing that. And they discovered some things. They discovered that maybe the education they thought their kids were getting wasn't what they thought it should be. And they discovered that it certainly wasn't effective in an online Zoom atmosphere like they'd hoped. And then they discovered that they kind of like not commuting to their own job. And then they discovered that between childcare and clothing and gas and transportation, that second job that one of the parents had really didn't add that much to the bottom line, but it did add a lot of chaos.
Yeah.
And then they discovered that rather than, running from school event to school event to school event, where one kid's life is totally upended, that it was kind of nice to just stay home and chill. I remember my sister Julie, like 3 months into the pandemic, when all the kids were at home and her daughters, I said, how's it going? And she said, oh, it's fantastic. I said, what do you mean? Well, they had a couple of teenage boys, and she said they're sweet and nice again. And I said, why is that? And she said, well, I think it's because of sports. They were having to get to the school before 6:30 in the morning to get an early morning workout. And then they were staying late into the evening till 7 or 7:30 at practice. And they were just tired all the time.
Yeah.
And it wasn't because the school was doing anything wrong or the coaches were doing anything wrong. when you are 14, 15, 16, and your body's growing like a machine, you need a certain amount of sleep. And if you don't get it, you get kind of cranky. And so a lot of people discover that. And so they're redefining who they work for, right? I don't have to meet what society once said was the status quo. It's okay if our total income goes down a little bit and I don't have daycare and I don't have 20 errands. And you know what? We just figure it out as a family. And so what a great, they talk about the reset. I think there's a lot of positive resets that are going on right now. And so ultimately, Dad said this because we talked, I'm making a Phil Mickelson connection here because Phil just won the PGA at 50 years and 11 months.
That's awesome.
And just epic. And not only was it epic, but I mean, he came into the tied for the lead on the second day and held on to it and had some pretty big leads going in. And it was a nail biter, and everybody was like, oh no, this is going to be a crater because he's 50. And he goes out there and he wins. But here is the reality. He did a lot of things in preparation to win that I'm sure he didn't like doing. I'm sure the way he had to do his diet, he didn't necessarily like. I'm sure the way he changed his physical workout routine, it wasn't his first choice. I'm sure the way he did his mental preparation and practice, there were other things that were probably more fun, right? And so this is Mike Rowe. You don't have to like every aspect of what your work is, but isn't it cool when that work provides for you to build the intentional legacy and the satisfaction that you gave it everything you got? I mean, at
Yep.
the end of that day, if Phil had not won, he still could have looked in the mirror and he said, you know what? There's not one thing I would do different. And ultimately, I think that's the big purpose. That's the big why. That is what, when we say, are we working for God? We're working for ourselves. Dad said this. He said that success is the maximum utilization of the abilities that God gave you.
Yes.
Right. So, what if working for ourselves meant that we recognized our purpose in God's creation and we simply maximized every ability He's given us and we become the professional that we need to become in order to serve people in whatever role that we're put into?
Yeah, Tom, it reminds me of the old quote that we've all heard. You talking about there's always things that we're not going to love everything in there, and so quotes, and it's battered around about who said it. Mark Anthony is cited with saying, "If you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life." Mark Twain, I think, is more known for saying, "Find a job you enjoy doing, you'll never work a day in your life." And God bless those guys, but I just don't agree, because the work that I love and enjoy the most is still work. I mean, when it comes down to it, what do I enjoy most? Probably sitting down with a blank piece of paper and writing out my thoughts and ideas. That's how I craft these shows, come up with the concepts for them, the recordings for them, and then doing my book just recently. Man, I'm eager to embrace the role of author, more and more and more. Um, but it's still work. It's difficult to sit down and think through and think creative. So it's a blast, but it's still work. I mean, I could take that back to cycling. And I loved racing. That's what I liked. I did not like going out and training in the rain. I didn't like training on the trainer. There's a lot of the travel and the accommodations I did not enjoy. I didn't enjoy managing my diet at all. I didn't enjoy any of that, but man, I loved to race. So I was motivated to do those things because it gave me the opportunity to go out there and be masterful on the roads and go for the end of it. So I appreciate you saying that you find the thing that you love the most. And somebody's going to have to tell me, I have to see their work, say, seriously, there's nothing that you do that you don't enjoy. I don't know anybody like that. Maybe Richard Branson. I heard one time that he works like 20 minutes a day. He just makes a couple phone calls, does decisions, then goes off and play. Maybe, but I also know he paid his dues, to get there. So thank you for pointing that out. Wait, one more point here, Tom, because we did have a lot of people. Brian Davis, he says, I work for me and my 2 kids and my clients to scale their business. So I'm going to focus on, I work for my clients. Leslie says, I'm sorry, no. John Simpson here says, I work for small business owners that want to double their leads and double their profits. Lori says, I work for a school district and I serve all the little ones and their families as well. Jessica Moyer, who gives us so many great responses, she says, I work for the women who are ready to become healthier, happier, and more purposeful. I mean, that right there. I mean, hopefully, kind of going back to what I talked about being removed from the end product or service. I do think that's tragic for us not to be able to go in. Think about your kids to say, if my kids were to, if I was to walk in, somebody gave them this message, say, Daddy, who did you serve today? Thank goodness. Did I just, serve myself? If I'm providing any product or service that somebody buys, the only reason they're buying it is because they got value. Back to you mentioned Daniel, Rabbi Daniel Lappin. He says money is that certificate of appreciation. So if I got money, somebody's appreciating it. My employer, and if I got paid by my employer, they're paying me. They're able to because a product or service that gives somebody value. So we should all know again who that person is. And that is a good one to, as we started off talking about, is your first reaction. Hey, I work for God. I work for a higher, calling. Do I work for my family? Do I work for a person? And ultimately, I do like that perspective, Tom, that at the end of the day, we can make a case for, and I am working for whoever pays me. I am working to provide value to somebody who says, I will give you my money for that product or service. So here in podcasting, who am I doing it for? Ultimately, yeah, I'm doing it for the listeners. If they don't find value, they don't listen. I'm not doing this. And so I am podcasting. Who am I podcasting for? Yeah, I enjoy doing the work. I enjoy crafting. It fulfills me, but it wouldn't if nobody found value in it. So there's a good case for, yeah, we're doing it for the end recipient, don't you think?
Well, ultimately, if there's not somebody who receives value from it, then it's going to be a challenge to achieve the other reasons that you're here, right? If ultimately, that's, you said that, can we get theological in it? In Hebrew tradition, Jewish tradition, there is no word for retirement in Hebrew, because the connotation is that I'm retired, I'm done serving, it's time for you to serve me, right? There's nothing left for me to do. I always look at it as, no, we're not retiring. Dad said we were getting refired. We're moving to a different or higher level of service, serving in a different way. And so, what is it that we do, that you do, that's serving someone else? And if it's not, boy, that's a challenge to me.
Yeah. Well, I'd say by proxy of business, it has to. But do we keep that in mind? Do we keep that in mind, especially for an employee? If we're a business owner, I think it's more, obviously it's generally more tangible, but it's convicting to me to think about employees. And are we keeping that? Am I keeping that at the forefront of their vision of who we are all here to serve in this business? Man, good stuff. As always, it's so great. I love posting these questions and getting the feedback because it brings up different angles. It gets me thinking. These past few shows, Tom, they've been such great as I've read through people's stuff. Sometimes I think that I don't think through it enough before I post the question. I perceive that there could be some interest and some value here, but it's when I read people's comments that it makes me think more about myself. Like, wait, well, how am I didn't think about that. How am I viewing that? How am I walking that out or not? So I always feel like I'm the most benefiting student and learner of all these shows. Always grateful for your wisdom, Tom. Thanks, brother.
Likewise, brother.